Guys, it's Mitchabiro for Project Fmile. Project Fmile is a project that was started with an aim of spreading awareness on mental health and suicide here in Kenya. So first things first, we're currently in the middle of a pandemic. With that being said, please ensure you're getting your information from the right websites. That is WHO, World Health Organization, and your Ministry of Health, your various Ministry of Health. Also ensure you're listening to your government, because I believe every government is doing its best to ensure that we flatten the curve. So yeah, do abide by all the measures in place, even if that's a complete lockdown.
Apart from a global pandemic, we are currently battling systematic racism. This is an issue that has been going on for a while. And this is a quick reminder that Black Lives Matter. So take your time to educate yourself more about Black people and Black people's culture. Thank you. As a Kenyan, police brutality is something that is not new to me. It is something that we have battled for years. We have had the death of Baby Pendo in 2017. We have lost Yasin. We have lost Carlton Minor. And we've lost numerous lives due to police brutality. And now it's a time to take a stand on this issue. Please contribute if you can. At the moment, we may feel like our hands are tied, but in real sense, they aren't. In our latest IGTV video, we talked about how you could help us to make a difference in terms of ending police brutality here in Kenya and ending systematic racism in the US. Ensure you subscribe to our channel so that we're able to meet monetization status, and whatever we make from AdSense in the next 2 months shall be contributed to Black Lives Matter and ending police brutality in Kenya. Thank you.
So on today's video, we're going to talk about eating disorders, and this is something we have talked about previously on this channel. We do have a video on eating disorders. I will link it down in the description box. Now, we made this video in February of 2019, and over a year has elapsed since we made that video, and I do feel there's updated information I need to make on that video. So yeah, you can check out the video. So first things first, because of TikTok, I have discovered TikTok can prove to be a dangerous place for teenagers especially, and this is something Luke Alexander took a deep dive into, so you can check out that video. I will link it down in the description box. Now the thing is, with TikTok, there are people who are encouraging let's say eating disorders, in the sense of like someone is bragging that, oh wow, I only took 1 meal today, or I only ate this amount of calories, yet you'd find that's not enough calories for your body to sustain itself, and you end up seeing it's promoting unhealthy eating behaviors. And this is something that we need to talk about, because at the end of the day, such behaviors are glorifying eating disorders, and that's not what we want. We do not want to see a rise in eating disorders, which we are currently seeing at the moment. Another thing is that I saw Elodie Zone's video on eating disorders, and she brought eating disorders I was not aware of to my attention. So yes, here are some of the clips on that.
Yeah, and I feel like the media is one of the main reasons why eating disorder statistics have shot up through the roof. But I don't want to dive into that too much, because I'm gonna talk a little bit about it more as the video kind of progresses. The next thing is cultural ideals. Now, there is a documentary that I watched that BBC released. It's on YouTube. I believe it's on BBC Travel. I can't remember the exact country. I think it might have been like an Eastern European country, or I can't remember the exact one, but in their culture, the individuals, I'm so sorry, I can't remember, but in that culture, they believed that women have to be extremely obese, and that is the way that they consider, those were the standards of beauty that culture had. And so you had girls as young as 12, as young as 8, being fed thousands and thousands and thousands of calories every single day to get them as overweight as possible. And that's something that's been practiced for generations and generations in that area of the world. So I thought that was quite interesting, because essentially that would lead to an eating disorder, especially if you're as young as 8 years old, being fed things that, 30-year-old sumo wrestlers are taking. Then that is something that can lead to that. There was also a series that I used to watch by Jessica Simpson, where she would travel around the world and speak to people in different countries to get an understanding of what they consider as beautiful when it came to the standards of women. So, you know, she'd go to places like China, where it's all about having very pale skin. She'd go to like various countries around Africa, and I know a lot of African beliefs. We want, due to our history, like we want our women to be a lot more bigger because it shows a sense of wealth. You go to like West.
So yeah, some eating disorders, I was not aware of them. And also, there's a time I was watching a certain video on YouTube, and I did come across an eating disorder I was also not familiar with. So I felt the urge to make this video updating the information made on that previous video on eating disorders. So yeah, as I stated in that video, there are three main eating disorders that we like talking about. That is anorexia nervosa, bulimia nervosa, and binge eating disorder. Now, all these three, we tend to associate eating disorders with females. We do not see it as something males can get, which is part of the problem. I think that's why many people don't get help for eating disorders. So yeah, that's part of the problem. I would like to clear the air. Eating disorders is not something only males can get. Females and males can get eating disorders, so that just needs to be out there. So yeah, let's take a look at each eating disorder. And yes, last time in our video someone left a question on how to help somebody with an eating disorder or solutions for an eating disorder. So again, I will talk about that in this video. So let's start with anorexia. It is a life-threatening eating disorder characterized by abnormally low body weight, intense fear of gaining weight, and a distorted perception of weight or shape. People with anorexia use extreme efforts to control their weight and shape, which often significantly interferes with their health and life activities. When you have anorexia, you excessively limit calorie or use other methods to lose weight, such as excessive exercise, using laxatives or diet aids, or vomiting after eating. Efforts to reduce your weight, even when underweight, can cause severe health problems, sometimes to the point of deadly self-starvation. Now, as explained there, with anorexia, someone has the urge where they feel they're fat. Yet at times, this person is not fat in any form or shape, but they feel that they're fat. So every time they look at the mirror, they just see, oh wow, I'm fat. So they have this urge to lose weight. So you find this person does every measure possible to ensure that they limit their calorie intake. You find they're not taking enough calories, or rather taking the calories down.
Oh my God, what is that? Oh my God, what is that?
They're not taking the calories that they need. The thing is, even if they eat, you end up seeing that they're taking every measure possible to ensure that they do not gain this weight. For example, over exercising, again, which I did talk about in the previous video. Watch the previous video first and you can watch this one. Anyway, you find they do take preventative measures to gain weight, such as over exercising, and which can lead to deadly starvation, because again, your body's not getting the calories that it needs to ensure it's sustaining itself, and it can prove to be risky. The other disorder is bulimia nervosa, commonly known as bulimia. It is a serious, potentially life-threatening eating disorder. When you have bulimia, you have episodes of binging and then purging that involve feeling a lack of control over your eating. Many people with bulimia also restrict their eating during the day, which often leads them to more binge eating and purging. During this period, you typically eat a large amount of food in a short time, then try to rid yourself of the extra calories in an unhealthy way because of guilt, shame, and an intense fear of gaining weight from overeating. You may force vomiting, or you may exercise too much, or use other methods such as laxatives to get rid of the calories. If you have bulimia, you're probably preoccupied with your weight and body shape, and may judge yourself severely and harshly for your self-perceived flaws. You may be at a normal weight, or even a bit overweight. So again, I feel like the issue of eating disorders does come about with the issue of perception and body dysmorphic disorder, and that's when you just generally don't feel like you're good enough or your body looks good enough. So with bulimia, you basically have periods where you eat a lot of food, like you stuff yourself with a lot of food, and then you force yourself to vomit. Most of the times, people force themselves to vomit, and again, due to calories, you feel guilty that you've taken this amount of calories, so you're trying to get rid of those calories that you have taken. And people do extreme measures such as, again, puking, over exercising, using of laxatives, and laxatives are not interesting, best believe me. Yeah, but using laxatives and all that. So they do judge themselves harshly for having such bodies. So yeah, another thing is the other disorder is binge eating disorder. This is when you have binge eating disorder, you regularly eat too much food, that is binging, and feel a lack of control over your eating. You may eat quickly or eat more food than intended even when you're not hungry, and you may continue eating even long after you're uncomfortably full. After a binge, you may feel guilty, disgusted, or ashamed by your behavior and amount of food you've eaten, but you don't try to compensate for this behavior with excessive purging or exercise as someone with bulimia or anorexia would do. Embarrassment can lead to eating alone to hide your binging. You may be normal weight, overweight, or obese. Now, as I said, now the difference, here's when you can see the differences between these three eating disorders, which tend to be the main eating disorders that we talk about. So you can see the difference between bulimia, anorexia, and binge eating disorder. Unlike the other previous disorders, with binge eating disorder, yes, you may feel guilty for all of this, but you don't do anything to get rid of these excess calories. Now the thing is, you may be binging because of stress, or overeating rather, because of stress and things of the sort, and you need to know the right amount of calories that one needs to eat for your body, because to maintain a healthy weight, you also need to eat the right amount of calories. Yeah, I am not a nutritionist also, so yeah, but anyway, you get the gist. The other disorder, this is a new disorder that I did not mention in the previous video, and this is rumination disorder. It is repeatedly and persistently regurgitating food after eating, but it's not due to a medical condition or another eating disorder such as anorexia, bulimia, or binge eating disorder. Food is brought back up into the mouth without nausea or gagging, and regurgitation may not be intentional. Sometimes regurgitated food is rechewed and reswallowed or spit out. This disorder may result in malnutrition if the food is spit out, or if the person eats significantly less to prevent this behavior. The occurrence of rumination disorder may be common in infancy or in people who have an intellectual disability. It's something that we don't talk about. This was like the first, when I watched Elodie Zone's video, that was the first time I heard of this disorder, and I felt like we need to talk about this disorder. So yes, rumination disorder. So you find that it's not intentional that you are regurgitating the food. So yeah. Now you find the other type of eating disorder is avoidant / restrictive food intake disorder. This disorder is characterized by failing to meet your minimum daily nutrition requirements because you don't have an interest in eating. You avoid foods with certain sensory characteristics such as color, texture, smell, or taste, or you're concerned about the consequences of eating such as fear of choking, and food is not avoided because of fear of gaining weight. The disorder can result in significant weight loss or failure to gain weight in childhood, as well as nutritional deficiencies that can cause health problems. Now we all know a picky eater. I'm not going to say I'm a picky eater, but yes, slightly when I go out, I'm a bit picky if I'm not familiar with a certain food. I'm not the type to try out new foods. But you know those people who are extremely picky, that if this food doesn't look this color, it's not okay. Yeah, that is something similar to avoidant / restrictive food intake disorder. So yeah. Due to the fact that they're not eating foods that they do require, at times they're foods that we don't like, but again, our body requires them, so that's why we're taking them. For example, not everyone is a fan of veggies such as spinach. I don't like spinach personally, but anyway, you find that you're not getting the nutrients that you require, and that leads to malnutrition or extreme weight loss, which again might lead to somebody being underweight, which is a problem. And I know people usually argue that BMI is not an effective way of measuring someone's health, but it is helpful in the sense that, of course, it gives us a guide to where your health is at, because again, there are different things that contribute to your body mass. It could be your bones, the density of your bones. Again, your weight could be, or your mass could be body fat and muscle. So that is a whole other thing. The last eating disorder that we do not talk about is diabulimia. I believe it's pronounced as diabulimia, but anyway, it is bulimia that occurs in type 1 diabetes. And basically what happens in this type of disorder is that someone with type 1 diabetes avoids eating food or giving themselves insulin with the purpose of losing weight. Yeah. Now, what are the red flags to know if someone has an eating disorder? So yeah, let's get into that. So you might find excessive focus on healthy eating. Please differentiate when someone is actually just taking care of their health or has an eating disorder. I know it's really hard to tell the two apart because some of them overlap. For example, over exercising, the people who are healthy and care about their health, who count calories and have apps that, like, you know, tell them, let's say this food has this amount of calories and all that. So yeah, excessive focus on eating healthier, making own meals rather than eating what the family eats, withdrawing from normal social activities, persistent worry or complaining about being fat on talk of losing weight, skipping meals or making excuses for not eating. Please be on the lookout for this one. But again, please be sensitive when it comes to this skipping meals or making excuses for not eating, because there are Muslims around us, and during the month of Ramadan, yes, they do not eat during the day. So yes, please be very careful with how you go about that one. Adopting an overly restrictive vegetarian diet, repeatedly eating large amounts of sweets or high-fat food, frequently checking in the mirror for perceived flaws, use of dietary supplements, laxatives, or herbal products for weight loss, excessive exercise, underline the keyword excessive exercise, calluses on the knuckles from inducing vomiting, again, which is common in bulimia because you induce vomiting, problems with loss of tooth enamel that may be a sign of repeated vomiting, leaving during meals to use the toilet, eating much more food in a meal or snack that is considered normal, expressing depression, disgust, shame, or guilt about eating habits, and eating in secret. Now, of course, you have all these warning signs of someone may have an eating disorder, but what are the exact causes of an eating disorder? So, well, genetics and biology do play a role. Now, biological factors such as changes in brain chemicals may play a role in if one will develop an eating disorder or not. Certain people may have genes that increase the risk of just developing an eating disorder. Psychological and emotional health. People with eating disorders may have psychological and emotional problems that contribute to the disorder. They may have low self-esteem, perfectionism, impulsive behavior, and troubled relationships. I feel like this also ties down to how society views certain things as beautiful. Again, the standard of beauty is constantly is constantly evolving in society. So you find somebody, like, because let's say this type of body is deemed as ugly, they're trying to do their best not to look that way, which does lead to an eating disorder. Low self-esteem, if you're not feeling good about your body, like, yes, there's that point of you are overweight or obese and you want to work on your body, but there's also that point where you are doing unhealthy things that are damaging your body. So there is a very thin line, or you have to be very sensitive about how you go about this, rather. So some of the risk factors for this are, interestingly enough, teenage girls and young women are more likely than teenage boys and young men to have anorexia or bulimia. Although eating disorders can occur across a broad age range, they often develop in the teens and early 20s. So certain factors of risk that put one at risk of an eating disorder. I feel like it's really interesting that they've mentioned that females do have a higher risk of developing an eating disorder. Again, I feel like that ties back to the fact how society is so strict when it comes to the standards of beauty, especially for women. In different areas, there are different standards of beauty. For example, you'll find in Asia, especially, let's say China, North Korea, and all that, they view skinny bodies as the standard of beauty, compared here to Africa, where generally we've always, the bigger the body, we find you are blessed. In Europe, we think, you know, the skinnier the body, the better. So it really differs per place. So yeah. So some of the risk factors for developing an eating disorder are family history. So if there is somebody in your family suffering from an eating disorder, you are more likely to develop an eating disorder. Eating disorders also occur with other mental health disorders such as generalized anxiety disorder, depression, and obsessive compulsive disorder. So we do have a video up on depression and obsessive compulsive disorder, so I will link them down in the description box. Another risk factor is dieting and starvation. Now, the reason why we're viewing this as a risk factor is if you do not take the right precautionary measures when it comes to dieting and the amount of foods or nutrients that you're taking in, it can be proved to be dangerous because you will end up developing an eating disorder at the end. Another risk factor is stress. When you are stressed, some people binge or eat a lot, and there are people who do not eat enough, again, which does contribute to either having binge eating disorder or anorexia. Some of the complications of eating disorders are serious health problems. Again, you're not getting enough nutrients, so you are more likely to develop serious health problems. Depression and anxiety, suicidal thoughts or behavior, problems with growth and development, social and relationship problems, substance use disorders, work and school issues, and death. So some of the preventions for eating disorders are: avoid dieting around your child. So if you have a child and they do watch you, let's say, being very careful around what foods you're eating, they may pick up some of these habits and you find they're not getting the right amount of nutrients that they need. You could talk to the person who you think has an eating disorder and ask them what the issue is. It could be due to a result of body dysmorphic disorder. So these are some of the risk factors for eating disorders. If you suspect you have an eating disorder, please go see a psychologist or a psychiatrist. Do not self-diagnose, as this is not helpful, and chances are you will get a wrong diagnosis. So do not self-diagnose. If you feel like you have an issue, please do reach out to a psychologist or psychiatrist. Again, there are different treatment options for those with eating disorders. There is hope for you. So yeah, hope you enjoyed this video. Ensure you give it a thumbs up. Ensure you subscribe to our channel for more content on mental health.